Welcome to Chasing Your Dreams podcast, where we dive into the journeys of ambitious individuals who are turning their dreams into reality. Get ready for real conversation, success stories, and tips to keep you moving forward. Here's your host, Eric Hall.
Welcome back to the Chasing Your Dreams podcast. I'm your host, Eric Hall. Please like, comment, or subscribe. Really, we got a great interview today set up for Mr. Thomas Carroll. I'm going to give him a chance to really introduce himself and really get into talking about some things, that he has going on in his life, really promoting two of his books, a cookbook. And then really just now we got this book that's coming out that actually just came out recently, From Challenges to Triumph, that we'll really dig into and kind of, give our readers a chance to see all you have to offer there, man, but really give them a chance to see who the man is behind the book as well. So without further ado, please introduce yourself, man.
Well, good day, everyone. My name is Thomas Hubbard Carroll IV. I was born in Fort Worth, Texas. Attended the great Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School there in Fort Worth, the mighty Wildcats. Let's see, I'm just a regular guy. I'm enjoying life as things come, as they go. You just have to enjoy life. I am the youngest sibling of thray, all boys. My mother hated it. She wanted a girl, but she had all three boys. And we're just regular, people. I'm just a regular person. I'm married. I have a son and 5 grandchildren. I only wanted 1, but I got 5. I know how my mother felt, but at least I got a variety. So that's just me. I went to Prairie View A&M University for my undergrad degree in architecture. I later went on to the military. I was commissioned as a lieutenant there at Prairie View and went on to the engineering corps. Also received a master's degree in urban planning through the military, as well as a MBA and a doctoral degree, as well as a licensed chef. So I'm kind of like all over the place. But because of the life and the experiences that I've had, they've led me to do those different careers. They kind of came natural for me. My dad was, I'll say that and then I'll explain it later. My dad was in the Air Force for 25 years, and my mom and my grandmother were in the business of, my grandmother owned several restaurants there in Fort Worth, Texas throughout my lifetime and even before my lifetime. And my mother kind of copied off of that, picked that up with her. So that's the reason the catering business I owned also a architectural engineering consultant company. So I kind of kept up the traditions of both my mom's side of the family and my dad's side of the family, being an engineer and a chef. And that's where you get the cookbook, and then you get the memoir. The memoir is very, very deep. I'm getting a lot of reaction from the memoir, and people are surprised. Of course, the reason I wrote the cookbook was to honor my grandmother. She was such a dedicated person and such a positive influence in my life that I dedicated that book to her. But the recipes come from my great-grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, myself, and then a couple of friends who just needed to get those recipes in there. And so that's what the cookbook is all about. And then I didn't want it to be just a cookbook, so I added what we call family moments in the cookbook. And those family moments it's like background on my family. It takes you back to when I was a kid and the differences in the way things are now versus the way kids are raised then, and the importance of family. For instance, there's one story in there about, let me pick one. I guess there's a story in there about eating at the table. We ate dinner was probably, except on Saturdays and Sundays, on the weekend, we ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner basically at the table. But during the week, it was mostly dinner at the table. And I look back and you see how many things you learn by being at that table, because we didn't have all the distraction. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have the tablets. We didn't have the games. And we, even back then, we weren't allowed to bring the checkerboards. And I'm trying to think what else we had when we could even bring to the table. It was for conversation. You learned about your family background. I'm surprised nowadays that I can ask kids, and I say kids, anywhere from, I'll say, 10 years old up to 30 years old. They have no clue anything about their grandparents or about their great grandparents or their aunts and their uncles. Well, see, when I was a kid, you learned about all of that. You learn, your cousins were a very important part of your lives, where nowadays they don't know their cousins. I can tell you everybody on my cousins, my first, second, third, fourth, almost my fifth cousins. These kids don't even know anything about their first cousins. And it's kind of remarkable to me that they have no clue. But that just shows you how times have changed, as far as I'm concerned, for the worst, because we've lost all of those family connections. And then we wonder why our children can't understand, or they can't relate, or they have so many mental problems because they have nobody to talk to. They have no struggles to go through that prepare them for the things. I have no clue where this bullying thing came from. No clue whatsoever. I was never bullied. But then I was 6'5" in high school. So a lot of people wouldn't go approach me and try to bully me. But everybody's bullied now. And I'm like, what is it? Get up and fight back. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. But if you had that family connection, those things would happen. When I went from elementary school basically through high school, I had a minimum of 15 cousins at the same school that I was in at the same time, from freshmen to seniors. So if there was going to be a fight, you were going to fight all of us. I just don't understand it now. And then they talk about our generation, and they say, "Oh, you were latchkey kids." Okay, I really don't understand that term, because it sounds like it's a negative term, but I guess in a way it is, in a way it's not. We were mature enough to go home. If our parents weren't there, we did what we needed to do, and we went outside and we played with our cousins, until they got home. Or we went to our grandmothers or our great grandmothers. And did what we need to do. Now, they don't even want kids to come home by themselves because they don't know what to do. They get into all this trouble, being by themselves, So it's just a different world. And I understand things have to change, but I think in retrospect, we need to still teach our children social behaviors. I like I say, I have 5 grandchildren, and I know sometimes they hesitate about coming over here because they know they are not allowed to bring their games. They're not allowed to bring their phones, because we're going to have conversation. We're going to talk about homework. We're going to talk about art. I'm taking them to the museum. I'm taking them to the ballet. I'm taking them to social events so they can be exposed to life, and they have more choices. If you've never been to a ballet, if you've never been to a symphony orchestra, if you've never been to the art museums, if you've never been to any of those type of cultural outlets, how do you know and put those things on the agenda of things that I would like to become. You know, I'm my matter of fact, my son and I just had this conversation the other day because my youngest granddaughter is getting ready to run track. So I said, "Oh, okay, that's good. When are they going to get ready to start taking piano lessons?" And he says, "Piano lessons?" So I said, "Yeah." I said, "You remember you took piano lessons when you were a kid?" He said, "Yeah, Dad." I said, "And you play the guitar now in church? You know?" I said, "Don't you want to offer your children the same opportunities that you had?" I said, "The difference in what you do and the way you do things now versus the way your children, you're not giving them the exposure to a wide variety of things. It's just like sitting at the table and your kids will say, 'Oh, I don't like that.' And I'll ask them, 'Okay, when did you taste that before?' 'I've never tasted it.' 'How do you know that you don't like something if you've never tasted it?' You know, so I get a little upset with that. And you know, if it's not McDonald's, Burger King, you know, they don't want it. I'm like, when you come to my house, because that's the way I was raised. When my mother put something on the table, or my
You ate it.
grandparents put something on the table, you didn't have a choice. You ate what was put before you, as they say. And if you didn't want to eat it, okay, that's good. Just you going hungry. That was the only two choices you had. You eat it or you don't eat it. It's not my problem. You know? But we sit here, we'll run out to McDonald's, then we'll leave McDonald's, go to Chick-fil-A. We leave Chick-fil-A, we go to Burgers. I'm like, that's not working for me. It's not working for me. I'm sorry. I'm getting off track. We
No,
supposed to
you
talk,
good,
but
man. You
but
good.
those
Hey, I
type of
want to
things.
hey, look, it's your moment, man. I want to allow you to cross over and get this stuff out, man. You know you didn't open up a couple different avenues for me, man, and especially let me ask one first, because I got people when I first get an interview, get it going. I always got a handful of people I tell, you know, that this is the person I'm gonna try to have on next. We're gonna be doing some things, and they've been looking for this cookbook. So please tell my viewers how to find the cookbook, and let's dive into it. You
Okay.
know, because I really want to talk about. It sounds like you're getting everybody back to those traditions, being able to build that family time through cooking. You know, I want you
Yes.
to elaborate a little bit more, even on those, and even share any other stories you might have, because actually, this is a great conversation just around, you know, family and bonding and things like that. Because, you know, I see it, you know, I got three girls, and, you know,
Ah,
right now they 13, 16, and my oldest is pretty much 22. But so she's kind of out of it. But I do see they in the social media era. And I've been having conversations around now, you know, it's all this AI stuff out here. Like, man, these kids really smart. They just, you know,
right.
get themselves through here by being able to look at the computer, get the answers, and kind of do what they need to do. So, you know, we be trying to figure out the best way forward in terms of how much we limit, you know, how much we give them access to. And then also, man, really along that thought, man, I'm a mental health counselor as well. I always talk about watching kids' dreams die in their own home. So when you talk about them needing that exposure, man, definitely elaborate on that much as you can, man, because how you mentioned piano lessons, it could be anything, man. You naturally don't know unless you really try a lot of things, man.
Right.
So just getting a chance to hear you talk, I mean, I love it. So I let you take away.
Okay. This is the cookbook. It's again, it's called Simple Southern Recipes from Mother to Son. And like I said, it's basically dedicated to my family, but especially to my grandmother and my even my wife has who's not really a cook. She has a recipe or two in here, but that's my grandmother, Anna Dorothy
Okay.
Jones. And when we lost, well, that's kind of explained in the other book, but my mom was a very beautiful woman. And I don't say that because I'm a child necessarily, but she was. And her that was her crown, and that was her downfall, unfortunately. And so at a very, very early age, we were taken from her, and my grandmother stepped up and said, okay, no, they're not going to foster care. They're not, no, we're keeping the 3 kids, boys together. I'm taking them. I will raise them. And that's also explained in the other book about all of that. But it's a wonderful cookbook. Like I said, it has so many varieties, especially people who, there's simple recipes in here. I try to keep it as much of the simple recipes as possible. The second book that will come out, the second half of the cookbook will come out later, probably in 2027. And there'll be a little more difficulty. But I wanted to give people a chance to have a cookbook that's, of course, very Southern, being born in Texas. But I also wanted them to have some easy recipes. There's barbecue sauce in here. Sometimes I do a class for the guys at the gym and the guys at the church, and just call them all in and we'll make homemade barbecue sauce. So I'll do a recipe that they can go home and make for their wives, and things like that. So I wanted some simple recipes in here, but there's everything from appetizers to your entrees to desserts and punches. So you'll know how to do, any type of era you want to be in, it's there. And like I say, there's things in here. There's a story. There's a cookie in here that's called Sandtart cookies. Now that I'm back in Texas after about 30 years, I found out that there's a cookie called a wedding cookie that's more or less a Hispanic cookie. And everybody says, oh, that's a wedding cookie. I'm like, nah, I've tasted a wedding cookie. You need to taste this cookie. It's totally different. And I also tell everybody in my book, this is not a I'm on a diet book. Everything in here is fattening. I'm sorry. It's fattening. And that particular cookie, I tell everybody, when you eat this cookie, go exercise, because you probably go to gain, just from that one cookie, you probably go gain at least a pound, because it's not the size of the cookie. It's sugar, and more sugar. And then it's rolled in powdered sugar. So it's a very fattening, cookie. Then of course we have sweet potato pie in here and lemon meringue pie. Even have the chitlins in here for us who love chitlins. My wife hates them, but those Southern recipes in here, sweet potatoes. A lot of this, it's kind of funny because a lot of this, like I looked at the other day, I guess the whole month of November and the whole month of December, I saw all of these recipes on YouTube coming out with all of these different types of sweet potato recipes, sweet potato pie and sweet potato, just how to make sweet potatoes, yams, And I'm like, do we only get that during Thanksgiving and Christmas season? Shouldn't people know how to make yams and sweet potato pie throughout the year? And so I'm glad that I put it in the book. Same thing with ice cream. Now I have that habit too. There's a recipe in here for homemade ice cream. And matter of fact, I had it for Thanksgiving. I made homemade ice cream for Thanksgiving. And one of my friends walked up to me and he said, hey, why do you, those cookies that you make, talking about the Sandtart cookies and the ice cream, they said, you only make those around Christmas. And why is that? And I said, let me think about that. I said, because my mother only made them during Christmas. My grandmother only made them do Christmas. My great-grandmother only made them during Christmas. So you pick up these traditional, habits. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start making those cookies more often. And I knew the reason he was asking, because he wanted me to make some more sometime. Because matter of fact, I saw him at the gym yesterday. And he said, you got any of those cookies hanging around? I'm like, no, I'm not making it anymore until about May. But there's a lot of different recipes in this particular book, and you will love it. You can actually get this book. Both books are available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Amazon for both of the books. are available. Those who are local to my area, the San Antonio area, if you, I plan to start doing some book signings around Texas. I've got an invitation to come up to Washington, D.C., and somewhere else, Houston this weekend. So I will have those books for sale, of course, and signing at all of my book signings and everything. So you can get them there, or you can always, like I said, get them at Barnes and Nobles or in Amazon.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to getting that. I'm gonna definitely make sure I was able to pull the other one already. I'm gonna definitely get that cookbook as well, and try to see what some of those traditions and stories are, so I can at least, for the most part, I'm gonna laugh, man. Now that I know who you are, will be get me some good laughs. Really understanding more about you and your family tradition, and the history that you guys have kind of had up until this point, and gonna continue to have even after this, because y'all do kind of still lean on that foundation of keeping everything together.
Oh yeah.
With all that, you've highlighted everything that you bring to the table, from being a cook. You have military experience. You got all kind of things going on. What motivated you to actually start telling your story in your other book?
The other book, From Challenges to Triumphs, there was two things that actually started me to write this book. One of the first things is I go to the gym a lot, and I mentor guys anywhere from, I'll say, high school through 30 years old. Some of them even 40 years old. And all of them would always ask, because I would tell them these interesting stories about my military days and some of the things about my family life and travels that I've done. And they would always ask me, who are you? You seem so much different than most people your age. You're still at the gym every day and you're exercising, you're trying to keep everything in shape and going and everything. And then you have all these wonderful stories and backgrounds and things. And you're always here trying to help people and everything like that. Who are you? And so I said to myself one day, maybe it's time that I put this all in writing. And the other thing is, that motivated me to write this book. And it's in here. The story's in here. I'm not sure if you're a mental health professional, so you're probably familiar. There was there still is actually a lawsuit out there for the Boy Scouts of America. You might be familiar. It was like a $4 billion lawsuit. Well, they started advertising, trying to get, victims to come forth back in, I want to say 2018, 2019, somewhere in there. And I was one of those victims, but I never, ever said anything. I was 4 years old when this happened, there in Fort Worth, Texas. And I never told anybody, because the guy did threaten, to kill me and my family and all of that kind of stuff. And as a 4-year-old kid, you believe them, even though I kind of knew my family and I knew that would kind of be hard to do, but you kind of believe them. So I never told anybody. And for years and years, I just kind of took it, and as my psychiatrist says, I put it in a box and I put the top on it and I put a bow on it, then I wrapped tape around it, and then I just put it up on the shelf, and I was never bothered with it again. I kind of forgot about it. I mean, you don't ever forget about it, but you just put it so far back that you just don't even think about it. And then when I started seeing these commercials about this lawsuit, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to bring all of that pain back up again, And so I talked to one of my psychiatrists at the VA. And that kind of goes along with another story that's in the book. I went through a cancer thing, and thank God it's been a year now, and everything is fine. They haven't found any other cancer. I went through a year's worth of treatment. But when I was talking to her, because they brought her in because of the cancer and how you feel. Some people get depressed, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. Well, I never did. But I was telling her about this incident, because you have to fill out all this paperwork and you talk about everything. And I'm one of those people, as you can see, I can talk about anything. It doesn't really bother me to talk about anything. So I was talking about this story with her. And after I finished maybe 2 sessions with her, she said, you have PTSD, right? And I'm like, I don't think so. She said, you do. She said, it's not affiliated per se with your military thing. She said, but this Boy Scout thing, really, you have PTSD and you just don't realize that's what it is. And I'm like, that's interesting. And so the more we talked about it, the more I wrote in my journal about it, I figured out, yes, I did, because and the technique, that professionals like you use to get us to talk about things like this, the hurt and the pain, we actually have to go through it all over again. And that was hard for me. I didn't want to go through that pain, but I brought it up. We started talking about it. And at 65, when I'm going through this stuff, I'm seeing now some of the same incidents. I can see the color of the walls. I can see the room that I was in. I can see him, which for years I couldn't see his face. It was like a blur, a big blur. I could never figure out who was this guy, who was this. And I finally could see his face again. And I came home and I finally told my wife, because we had been married over 30 years. And I never told her. I never told my son. I never told my parents. So no one ever knew about that until my brothers. So I figured, you know what? It's time. It's time for me to let people know, that this was a part of my life. This was something that happened, but I'm through it. I've gotten through it. But just going through the thing of taking it a piece by piece and write it in a journal over and over again, it did help. It helped so much, and then I started writing. That's one of the things that influenced this book, because I said, that's one story. Let me go ahead and write some other stories. So I wrote about the cancer. I wrote about the Boy Scout thing. I started writing about my experiences in college and writing about just, again, family life and how important family is to you when you're going through life. I just had a call, was that right before Thanksgiving, or maybe it was before Christmas, of one of my professors in undergrad who never had any kids, never married. And he called me and he said he just wanted to tell me what a great student I was when I was in Prairie View, not only in the field of architecture, but how I looked out for my fellow students, how I cared for my fellow students. He said, you were just a remarkable individual, and you were so far different than the other kids. He said, because they were kids, you were so much mature in college than the other students were. And he said, and I'm listening to him tell me this, and I'm like, what is going on? Why is he calling me? I mean, we did remain, I'll say, friends after college, because he was also a photographer, and I've lived so many places all over the world. I would invite him to come to, Germany, or I would invite him to come to Virginia or wherever I was stationed and take pictures and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of times he would come to places he hadn't already been, and he would go out, take all these pictures and stuff. And so I asked him, I said, why are you telling me this now? And he said, well, I just want you to know that I'm dying. And you were the first person I thought that I needed to call. And I was like, oh my goodness, of all the people you got. I know he had a sister. Of course, both his parents are deceased. But I'm like, I have that much influence on his life as he had on mine, you know. But again, it's all about connections. It's all about the friendships that you form to help you through life. So that story is in there. Again, there's so many stories in there, and everything in this book, this last book, is just what it says: is challenges to triumph. I had every reason in life to fail, or to be locked up, or to be just not a part of society, a working, functioning part of society. But because of my family, because of the things they instilled in me, never to give up. People in my church, the church that I grew up in there in Fort Worth, the influences that they had, and guys, men who never knew the influence that they had on me. And I have now, since the book has been, before the book came out, I called, because I do mention them in the book by name. I said, let me call their daughters and their granddaughters and their grandsons and sons and let them know, hey, the book's coming out. And I'm not doing this for you to buy the book. I just want to let you know, if you never knew, how much of an impact that your grandfather had on me and me growing up. You know, there was my son, one of my Sunday school teachers, you know, his daughter, and we kind of grew up together because we were around. I think she's like two or 3 years younger than I am. But, you know, I wanted her to know that her father was just like a dad to me, you know, because he, you know, again, back in those days, men in church, if they saw you doing something wrong, they corrected you. You know, not like nowadays, you're scared, you stand there on the sides because you don't want to say nothing. You don't know if you should get involved and whatever. No, that was not them. They came up, they whooped your butt, you know, and then they went and told your parents, so your parents would whoop your butt, you know. So those things, I am so appreciative now that now I'm an old grown man, but even, you know, that when I was going through those horrible teen years. They call them the terrible threes, but no, it's the teen years. They really are terrible. But I had those guys and those women to help guide me along, to make sure and push me to do better, to always stand up for yourself. Don't be scared to speak out. And that probably went overboard because now I speak out too much. People like, oh, I don't know about that, you know, because I never shied away. I never shied away from speaking out. If it was wrong, it was wrong, and I was going to speak on it, you know. And I still do that. We get into debates at the gym all the time. Our gym is like a social club, and I guess they all are now. But we talk about politics, you know. Of course, me being African American, I have a lot to say right now. And I don't understand some other, you know, ethnic backgrounds don't understand why we're still pissed off, you know. And they say, look, Carroll, you sound like you're mad. I am. And this is the reason I'm mad. And I'm also mad because you don't understand why I don't want, you know, why I'm mad, you know. And you know, I had one of those people to come up to me, both Black, both Hispanic and white, to tell me, can't we just move on and forget what happened? No, we can't. We can't, because it's still affecting us now, and it will affect us for generations to come. And you don't understand, and you don't want to see why it affects us, because you just want to get rid of it, and you want to erase the history of it. And let's talk about the real history of it, you know. And, you know, I always record a lot of stuff on my telephone about history and inventions and who've done what and massacres and all of this. And I sit there and I show it to them, and they're like, oh, yeah. Okay, now I can understand why you're a mad Black man. Yes, I am. I'm still mad. But, you know, and we don't want to expose our children to that. And my thing is, we better expose our children to that, because here we are again in 2026, and we're going through the same thing. Now we've opened, well, no, I can't say we've opened up the floodgate. Now our president has opened up the floodgate to say whatever he wants, whenever he wants, how he wants, which has now allowed other people to say what they want. And it's okay. And I told him, I said, my wife will not let me buy this shirt. There's a t-shirt that says, don't let your president get your plate kicked. But she won't, because it's almost to the point where I'm just waiting for it to happen to me. I'm just waiting because I know it's going to come. It's going to come. But if we don't tell our children, and if we don't tell our grandchildren the stories about how things happen, then when they have to undergo these experiences, they don't know how to handle it. They have no clue how to handle it. And then they become depressed. Then they want to, self-harm themselves. All it takes most of the time is talking to your children, making them aware of what's out there. And we don't even want to tell our children in the sense of protecting them. So who are they supposed to go to if they can't go to? Their friends haven't experienced it because they're the same age as them. And then when somebody calls them the N-word, then they're like, what's that all about? And then of course we can talk about that N-word too. It always had the same meaning when I was growing up. Now it's okay for one black person to call another black person that N-word. I'm sorry, I'm not calling anybody. And then let's look up the N-word too, and find the true meaning and where it really came from. And people really don't, just like they don't about a lot of stuff, they don't realize where it came from, who was actually directed to first, because it wasn't directed to black people first. But we don't understand that. We adapted it, we got it, but it really wasn't meant for us at first. And matter of fact, I told a guy the other day, we got into this deep conversation about white privilege. And he didn't see it. He didn't understand it. And I really had to calm down, because I said, okay, you're getting outside the box here. But I did have to tell him, I said, you know what? I said, let me make one more statement, and I'm going to leave you alone with this. And you can think about it. You can read it and find out for yourself that I'm telling the truth. I said, while your forefathers was over and you were pissing on a dirt floor or on the side of a wall somewhere, people in Africa already had toilets. We already had duct systems and everything like that. We were the ones who taught you. I said, but you choose to believe, just like white Jesus, you choose to believe that because it's all been whitewashed and you fell for it. You took the cookies and the milk and the cream and ate it all. I said, well, see, my forefathers, I said, we can just go back as far as my mom and dad and my grandparents and my great-grandparents. We didn't believe that. I have gone to other people's houses, black people's houses as a kid, and you look up and you see that white Jesus with blue eyes. It wasn't in our house. We didn't believe in the white Jesus, blonde straight hair, and blue eyes. It just didn't happen, And but if y'all choose to believe that, then that's your belief. So you'll find a lot of things in this book about that, how those type of things affected me, and you just have to get over it. I mean, in the sense of I had to hang on. And going through the rape, there's another story in there about when I was in the second grade, and I had a, and you're probably too young to even understand the concept of this, But I had a second grade English teacher. Actually, she was both. She was a writing and English teacher. We used to have a writing teacher. You that actually taught you how to write. I'm left-handed. Born left-handed, will die left-handed. Back then, you had these superstitious people who thought and believed if you were left-handed, you were evil. There was something wrong with you. So as she's teaching me how to write, she would not allow me to use my left hand. And she would take a ruler and hit me on the back of the neck or hit me on my hand or where she could get the lick in. And I was forced to write with my right hand in her class. And it looked absolutely like scribble. You couldn't understand it because I was not right-handed. And so one day I was in her class and she did the same thing. And she came around the second time and I'm still writing with my left hand. And she came around the third time. And the third time she came around to hit me with that ruler, I grabbed it. And actually I was going to throw it toward her. I didn't know. But I just put it in front of the classroom. And so she told me to go to the principal's office. So I did. And as I was walking there, the vice principal said to me, where are you going? Where's your pass? Because we used to have passes to be out in the hallway. And I told him, the incident. And I'm thinking, okay, he's going to empathize with me and understand where I'm coming from. And he's going to go talk to her about this, because this is wrong. You can't make somebody write with their right hand. And but so he told me, he said, just stand here for a minute. I'll be right back. So I'm thinking, again, he's going to talk to her. He comes back and he's follow me down here. So I follow him down there, of course, because that's what we did. When a grown person told you to do something, you did it. And as on our way, there were 3 other kids who were I was in the second grade. They were probably in the 4th and 5th grade. He told the 3 boys to come with him. And I thought, well, maybe he's going to discipline them because they're in the hall, but they had passes. But so we all went into this book room and he says to the other guys, he says, okay, I want one of y'all to hold him down, hold his arms and his hands, and the other guy to hold his feet. That man beat me with a board. You see how these big boards. And I couldn't even feel tears coming down anymore. Couldn't hit him. Just couldn't feel it. And finally, it was over. He told me to go back to class. I went back to class. I could not sit down. Could not sit down. And of course, the same teacher told me, oh yeah, you go sit down in that seat. And so I had to slide in this seat. Painful. Thank God I only had like 10 minutes before it was time. And that was my last class of the day. And it would be over. And my grandmother came to pick me up. So I ran out to the car after that class. And of course, back then, kids sit in the back seat. So I got in and I couldn't sit down. I turned on my stomach and my grandmother said, what is wrong with you? Sit down and fasten the seatbelt. And I'm like, I can't sit down. And she said, what do you mean you can't sit down? Boy, sit down. And I just couldn't do. So I had to explain to her what happened. Of course, again, back in these days, they didn't care about embarrassing you. She said, pull your pants down. So I pulled, and literally, if you could imagine a second grader, my butt was big as a basketball. That's how it's swollen. And so she said, what? And so she went in she told me just stay there, lay on my stomach and stay there. She went into the school, asked for him. I don't know what happened, but I know my grandmother. And she came back out in probably like 30 minutes and she was just livid. So we drove up to a store because of course they didn't have cell phones back then. And she called my great grandfather, one of her brothers, and one of my cousins, and told them what happened. And they told her, wait there, we're on our way. And this is the reason I was telling you previously, I know what my family would do.
Oh yeah.
So they came, they looked. I'm like, does everybody have to look at my baseball size? But you know what? Just can't y'all take the word? Strip it again, you know. So anyway, they told her, go take him to John Peter Smith Hospital and get him treated. We'll go in here and we'll resolve this problem. Well, needless to say, I stayed out of school for 2 weeks. And when I went back to school, I didn't see the teacher there anymore. And I didn't see the vice principal there anymore. And I stayed at that school for 2 years, didn't see him. Asking some other teachers and listening to other teachers, what other teachers were saying, nobody ever saw the vice principal again. Nobody ever saw him in life again. So I'm sure that my family did what my family did. And he's probably, well, as they say, feeding the fishes somewhere. But that story is
better go playing.
We took care of our own communities back then. You know, if there was a predator, if there was somebody, you know, doing something like he did to me, they took care of the problem. They didn't need the police, because the police most time wasn't gonna come to our communities anyway. So they took care of the problem. And so I'm sure that they took care of the problem, you know. And that happened 2 or 3 times in our family. Different little situations would come up and people would come up missing. But that's the way we resolve those problems. And it was so funny that my great-grandmother's house, well, my grandmother's and my great-grandmother's house were side by side. And years and years after, we sold the property. And my brother and I sold the property. And my brother said, you know what, now that I think about this, should we have sold that property? And I said, well, why wouldn't we sell the property? And he said, because of your family. I'm like, what do you mean because of my family, our family? And he says, where are those bodies buried? I was like, you think they buried them under the house? Oh, yeah. One never knows. No. But so far, nothing's been found.
Oh man, that's funny. That's funny.
But yeah, there's quite a few stories in there. And you know, I always write the stories from the aspect of trying to motivate people to do their best. You know, there's a story in here about friendships, because you have to realize, as they say in the Bible, everything has a season. Even friendships, you know, yes, I've had friends that I've met and known probably since even high school that I still stay in contact with. Not close contact, but we're contact. Most of my best friends are college friends, you know, or military friends that I met, you know, after that. But friendships sometimes have seasons, and those seasons could be a year, they could be 10 years, they could be 50 years, but you have to accept them and let them expire as they need to. And I realized, again, with guys that I mentor, especially again that age between 18 and 40, they don't really have friendships. They don't have long friendships. Even in relationships with women, you know, they date somebody or whatever, and they're so proud. Oh, I found a new young lady. She's so wonderful, blah, 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 blah. And then I talk to them, you know, 6 weeks later, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? How's the, you know, friendship going, relationship? Oh, we broke up. Yeah. I'm like, marriage, same thing. Oh, we were so in love. We got married. And I'm going to ask, Hey, how's the family? How's the wife going? Well, y'all need to come over. Oh, we're divorced. I'm like, what? Y'all ain't been married 30 minutes. But they don't take the time to do the research, or everything is so convenient now. It's just, okay, let's get a divorce. Let's separate. Let's just go our separate ways. Then it's just the same thing with even simple friendships. It's already hard enough for men to have friendships. But then when you couple that with, I don't have the patience, with the internet, with the media things and all of that, they just, for somebody to have a friendship for 6 weeks, I'm like, you never had a friendship. That was just passing in the night. That wasn't a friendship, but that's okay. That's okay. But again, it's because we've never learned, or they've never learned, the true meaning of friendships. The other thing that frustrates me is when I hear these young people say, oh, I haven't talked to my dad in 3 years. What? Your dad, is he deceased? What is it? And it's, oh no, he lives about 2 or 3 miles from me. Really? You haven't called him. You haven't texted. You have 3 years. That's all. And it's not just the parents; it's their sisters and brothers. I can't even. I can't conceive that. When my parents and my grandparents and my great grandparents, when they were living, I know not a week would go by without me communicating with them. Even now, they're all deceased. I only have one brother that's still alive, and he lives up in Baltimore, Maryland now. And every Tuesday, every Friday, those are our days. We're going to communicate. Sometimes it's a 2-minute conversation. Sometimes it's a 2-hour conversation. But we're talking to each other because we love each other. And now, and my brother was never like me. I always ended my conversation with, I love you. It took him 45 years before he could say, yeah, I love you too, or be the one to live it. I love you, and but I just don't get it. How can you not? It's just like me not talking to my son I don't know. Again, I can't imagine, because we talk to each other at least, even if we're pissed off at each other, we talk to each other once a week. But most of the time we talk to each other every other day, either by text. And I being 66, I had a hard time with this text thing, because I needed to hear your voice. I needed to hear the inflection in your voice to make sure that you were saying what you were really saying to me, So, but I finally said, okay, this is how people communicate nowadays. They got the text. And so I'm good with it now. I still prefer the telephone call, but at least now I have grandchildren who will call, at least, the 2 youngest one call just about every day on the way home from school. Paw, I'm on my way from school. I'm like, okay, good. Get your snack, do your homework, and that's, from that age is when you start training them. And I know they don't like that word train, but that's when you start training them at that young age, so they will continue to communicate with you. Again, I'm 66. If I'm lucky, I got 20 years. Doubt it, but if I'm lucky, I got 20 years. I would love to be able to continue to talk to and have such a great relationship with my grandchildren, before I die. I don't see that happening in so many families now. They don't talk to their grandparents. They don't talk to their parents. They don't talk to their sisters and brothers. They probably talk to me more than they talk to their own family, and I just think it's sad. It's sad, but we've lost that. We've come so far, technology-wise is good, but we've lost all of that other things. My son kind of got a little upset with me because years ago, I'll say about 10 years ago, my grandchildren came up, and the oldest one we were having breakfast, and she kept reaching in the plate and picking up her waffles and put them in. And I'm just sitting there and I'm looking, I'm like, why is she putting her waffles in her mouth with her fingers? And so I finally said, I can't take it. I can't take it. I said, what are you doing? She said, what, Papa? What are you doing about? I said, why are you using your fingers to eat? And she said, well, that's the way you eat pancakes and waffles. No, I don't even eat fried chicken like that. I cut it off the bone. But, it was okay in my son's household. And I told him, I said, this is all your fault. This is your fault. You were not allowed to eat like that. By the time you were 5 to 7 years old, you could eat a 7-course meal at the table. I said, because that's how I trained you. That's how you grew up. Because I wanted you to be able to know if you ever went out to any type of dinner, and he did, that you had to know which one of the 6 forks to use, or 3, 4, 5 knives to use, or which spoon to use. You knew how to do that. I said, but here now you are failing to teach your children social etiquette. Oh, Dad, they don't really need to know all of that stuff. Really? So you're telling me that I put up all this money for your children to go to college. And if they go and they get a really nice job or open up a company and they go to a banquet at now 25 years old, that they're going to eat at that banquet, they're going to pick up that piece of chicken instead of using that fork and that knife. No, Dad, well, they'll know about it. Where are they going to learn it? If you don't teach it to them and I don't teach it to them, where are they going to learn it from? You have to start this stuff early. Yeah, they got YouTube, but they got YouTube for knowing how to tie a tie. I don't see anybody tying one. So they're not necessarily going to look at YouTube to figure it out. So it's a lot of stuff in that book about that, the failures, the mistakes that I could have made, but because of my family, because of the love that people had for me, I grabbed onto things and I pulled myself up. I took those negatives. People, of course, would tell you, "Oh, you can't do that. You can't be an engineer. You can't do. You're not going to be an officer." And every time somebody would tell me I can't, I did, because that's the way my family told me to do. Just don't listen to them. Show them what you can do. Don't tell them. Show them.
Absolutely.
And
let me let me ask you this while you along those lines, man. And I've heard you mention it twice, just how you've been mentoring, through at your gym and just in general throughout life, man. And just hearing these stories, man, they enriching. So, did you have any mentors yourself that you actually looked up to and got you kind of, where you at, helped you along your path?
Yes, I had, like I said, the guys in church, the men in church, always mentored me. Most of them were school teachers, and they would always, how's the homework going? What are you working on now? So I had those. And then, of course, I had my dad. I had my grandfather. I had so many uncles, because I wanted to be an architect. And see, that's another thing. I knew that I wanted to be an architect by the time I was 6 or 7 years old. So my parents and my grandparents put things in place to make sure that I was exposed to all of that. We traveled every summer. One year we'd go up the East Coast, next year we'd go down the West Coast, and next year we'd come straight down the center through Chicago. But it was the exposure. They wanted me to see the buildings. My dad was in the Air Force. So, before I went to high school, before I went to high school, I had been to Japan. I'd been to Italy. I'd been to Africa. I'd been to probably at least 17 different countries before I graduated high school. It was all about the exposure. And I realized everybody can't do that for them kids, but you can take them to the museums. You can take them to the library. You can buy books, expose them to books that shows them. But you know, the thing about it, we don't even ask our children what they're interested in becoming, and we don't guide them. One of the things, and I have to say this, Asian parenting is some of the best parenting. People say they're very hard on them, which they are, but they tell their children what they're going to. You know, you're going to be a divorce lawyer. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to be this. You're going to be that, and that's what they become. We as Americans say, okay, you grow up, be whatever you want to be. If you don't be, doesn't be that, or be good at that. We take it all away. Yeah, if you don't want to be anything, don't be anything. Just be good at that, being nothing, you know. But that wasn't my family. My family believed in exposing us to everything, giving us every chance to succeed as possible. Now, if we failed at what we did, okay, well, you know what? It's not on us. It's not because you weren't exposed to things. It's not because you weren't given the opportunity, you know. And I took that along, you know, when I was a lieutenant in the military, especially being in the Army Corps, Engineering Corps, it wasn't a lot of people that looked like me. And right in at that particular time, the engineering school was in Virginia at Fort Belvoir. And I can remember when we were going through the sign-in process, and we had to go to the O Club, the O Club, to pick up our ID cards for the O Club to be able to use the pool and eat at the O Club dining facilities and things like this. I walked to the table to get mine, and the young lady looked up and she says, "Oh, you can skip this table." And I'm like, "But isn't this where I sign up to get my pass for the dining, for the O Club dining and swimming pool, tennis courts, things like?" She said, "You can go over to NCO Club." Okay. That's what you really want to tell me? I'm the wrong one. I've been taught by the right people. You don't want to tell me that. So we had to change that. My whole thing was from that day forward, I'm going to raise so much hell. I don't care if I lose my commission, if they put me out of the military, I'm going to straighten this out. And we did. We banded the blacks officers banded together, and we got that changed, you know. So, but if I didn't have those mentors to teach me my rights and tell me to stand up for my rights, then I would have said, "Oh, okay, let me go over to the O Club. I mean, to the NCO Club." And no, I was an officer. I deserved that right, you know. So yeah, I had a lot of mentors. Oh, and let me tell you this, because I don't want some of my customers to think that he's so pro-black. I am very pro-black, but I'm gonna do like they do. I have a lot of white friends, a lot of them, love them actually, and I do. I love people, period. And as I explained to the guys in the gym, I take every person as an individual. I don't care what color you are. If you're nice to me, if you're lovable to me, I'm lovable to you. That's how we form these friendships. I don't care if you're polka dot. If I like you, I like you. Now we can discuss all of this other stuff. It doesn't bother my friendship with you. You know, that's what being human is all about, being able to make friends and talk about these issues with one another in a purpose of dissolving and resolving some of these issues that we have. So I understand that, but this was my point. When I was growing up again in high school, they used to have a thing called, it was a program that they used to have called, it was like spend the day with your boss, or it was a mentorship program. And what happened was businessmen from the communities would come out to the schools. You would send them a resume. We had to make up our resumes, and they would send these resumes out to all of these different companies who were part of this sponsorship thing. And they would come out and choose you from your resume, choose you to spend weekends and or after school programs, and they would bring you to their companies and teach you and expose you to architecture, to engineering, to other, different fields, depending on what you wanted to be. Well, I already knew I wanted to be an architect. Well, I signed up for the program, sent out my resume, and they'd have this big auditorium fields day, and you would meet your mentor. Well, my mentor, and you're not from the Texas area, my mentor was Childs, H.E. Childs. Well, he's deceased now, of course, but H.E. Childs owned Western Oil Company of North America. Do you ever watch that program, Laying Man?
Yes.
It's a new series. It's kind of like that. He was that big multi-millionaire guy. He used to own the Texas Rangers. And he had a plane in Midland. He'd fly to Midland, to Dallas, to Arizona, to all these different places. Well, he chose me. And I never could understand it for a while and I had to ask him, I said, well, I'm going into architecture. That's what I'm going to be. And he said, well, this is close. And I'm like, no, all is one thing. Architecture is another. They don't even have some of the same alphabets. But I said, you know what? You can learn from everything. Everything is an experience, and you can learn from that experience. So I told him, fine. Okay. So my first day with him, he wanted to meet with my parents. And so we went that evening and met with my grandparents, actually, and my great grandmother. She wasn't going to be left out. And then when they found out my grandmother knew exactly who he was. We sit in my grandmother's living room, and he said, ma'am, he says, I don't want to offend you. He said, that is not my reason for making this statement. He said, I can see that your grandson has so much potential. He has the right etiquette. You've taught him well in that department. You've taught him how to speak, how to sit up proper, how to greet people, how to do the handshake. He is ready. So I know I don't have a lot of work to do. He said, but what I will say I want to do, he said, not because you can't afford it. He said, because from the house that you're living in, from the clothes that he wears already, I know you can afford it. He said, but this is what I want to do. First thing, I want to take him, and I'm taking him down to my tailor, and I'm having him 5 suits made, handmade, hand-sewn suits, tailor-made. We're getting shirts, 10 shirts, 5 pair of shoes, socks, belts, everything. He said, because I want him to sit in on executive meetings, and he needs to be dressed just like me. And my grandmother just kind of looked at him. She said, okay, no problem. And he did. And at that particular time, this was back in 1976, I believe it was, last of 75, 76. And that Monday when he came to pick me up, he said, I'll either send a driver or I'll pick you up myself. So I'm standing outside waiting for him because I got out of school like at 11, 12 o'clock. And this car pulls up and I'm like, oh man, that's a really nice car. I'm thinking limousine, but that's not what pulled up. And I'm wondering, is that for me? And so he gets out and says, hey, Thomas, come on. So I'm like, and I get in the car and I'm like, what kind of car is this? And it was a car called, I don't even think they make them because I don't even hear about them anymore. It was called a stud cat. And again, this is back in last of 75, 76. The car then cost $250,000.
Stud cat.
Stud Cat. Yes, Stud Cat.
I gotta look that up. I ain't never heard of that.
I ain't never heard one since. So we're driving. I'm like, oh man, I'm the one today. I'm driving. I'm riding this Stud Cat. We go out to his building, and we go by and pick up all these clothes that he's ordered, and we go out to Colonial Country Club, Fort Worth Colonial Country Club, which was the club there in Fort Worth, the private, the golf course, all that kind of stuff. And we go out and we have lunch. Well, he had to use the restroom, so we stood there. I stood there going into the maitre d', and he went to the restroom. So some guy comes up to me. He says, "Excuse me, are you lost?" And I said, "No." He said, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm waiting to have lunch." And see, again, this is this family thing, being taught how to handle people at that particular age. Because I was 15 years old, and I knew exactly what this guy's intention was when he started speaking to me. I was somewhere that was supposedly I shouldn't have been. I shouldn't have been in this. Why am I here at this private country club? And if I don't see nobody standing around you. So why are you here? Is your mom or dad working here or something? So I said, "No, I'm having lunch." And he said, "You're not having lunch here." I said, "Yes, I am having lunch here." He said, "I said, you're not having lunch here. Maybe you should go out to the golf course, to the they used to call them something, it's whatever the building is out there where the caddies go." And I said, "No, I'm in the right place. Maybe you're in the wrong place." And see, that's how far I would go at that particular age. Even though I'm trying to respect him, but you're now stepping on my feet, and I know what you're trying to do. So by that time, H.E. Childs walks up and he says, "Is there a problem?" And the guy looked up and said, "Oh, Mr. Childs." He said, "How are you today?" And he says, "I think I'm fine." He said, "Is there a problem with this young man?" He said, "Well, he says he's supposed to be having lunch here, but I think he's in the wrong place." He said, "No, he's not in the wrong place. He's having lunch with me." And you could just see, oh my God, because of course, Mr. Childs is on the board,
Mm-hmm.
So he said, "Maybe I need to speak to your manager because maybe you're in the wrong place." And he said, "Oh, no, I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't know who he was, with, and he was with you and all, of course they go through that bagging up, turning around, and all that kind of mess." And so we went in, we had wonderful lunch. Then we went on to his office, and at his office, he had this huge office. And for my first day, he had a smaller desk that was the exact replica of his desk, and he had it sitting right beside his desk. Everything on it that I needed. He introduced me to his assistants and other people there in his outer office, told them if I said this, to make sure that it was done. He said, "Because I'm going to teach you how things are done on the corporate level, because that's what you need to know. You don't need to know all this beneath stuff. You need to know how to run a company from the corporate level." He said, "Because that's where you're going to be. I already know this." And I did it every day from my sophomore year, junior year, senior year. My senior year, he started asking me what school was I going to attend. And he wanted me to go to University of Oklahoma, I think that's the one, and major in geology, of course, because that's what his major was, and that's the school he went to. And he said, "Don't worry about the cost. It's full scholarship. Everything's paid for." And I said, "Sir, that's not what I want to do, and not this university in which I'm going to." He said, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I've always told you I wanted to be an architect. And I'm going to Purdue University. It has one of the highest ranked engineering schools in the country." And he said, "I've never heard of that school." I said, "Look it up." He said, "I'm going to do that. I'm going to find out about Purdue." And he did. So the next day when I came in, he said, "I found some information on your school." He said, "You are absolutely right." He said, "It's one of the highest ranked engineering schools." He said, "And that's really where you want to go?" I said, "That's where I'm going, sir." That's where I'm going. And so he kind of left it alone, and I don't know if you know, you've probably heard of Tandy Corporation. They used to have, oh gosh, what was it? Tandy Radio Shack. Tandy owned Radio Shack. Tandy had Tandy. Leonard. Tandy bought Leonard's department store. They also bought Tandy Electric. They had all multimillionaires too. Well, Tandy and his house were catacornered across the street from one another. When I was getting ready for my senior, you know how they have senior year, what do they call them? Class, all the senior activities in your senior year. Well, he told my grandparents he wanted to have my graduation party at his home. And my grandmother said, I don't think that's gonna work. And he said, well, why? And she said, well, for one thing, these black folks ain't coming out there, because this was an exclusive. You didn't get in these gates. I'll have the gates open. And out of the probably 100 and so people that I invited, and maybe the 60 that came, a lot of them turned around because they knew that the address was wrong. And I'd already told them, hey guys, this is in Richland Hills. This is West Richland Hills. This is the richest part of Dallas-Fort Worth that you can live in. And so some of them made it. He had it catered, had a wonderful time. And again, he had this talk with me about going off to college, what to do, what not to do. If I need anything, give him a call. And I'm good. Well, I already had I had $200,000 worth of scholarships when I went to college. And when I got there and went to do my registration, the lady said, I got to the window. She said, ID. I slid my ID. And she looked at me and she said, oh, you're him. I'm like, whoa, that's kind of like a private statement, but yeah, I'm him. And she said, wait right here. And so she goes back and takes about 5 minutes. She comes back and other people are peeping around like, shh, that's him. I'm like, what is the deal? So she comes back and she says, okay, I need for you to sign some papers and then we'll be finished. And she said, just sign right here. And I'm like, no. I need to read what I'm signing. So I'm reading stuff and it's basically saying, oh, you go get some money. And so I finished reading, I signed it. And she said, okay, do you want to check or do you have a bank account in the area here? And I said, no, I have one at home in Fort Worth. She says, no, you need to go open up a bank account here, because every month from now to your senior year, you will get no less than $7,000. And I'm like, excuse me? She said, yeah. Well, what am I supposed to do with it? And she said, you do whatever you want to do with it. I said, well, why am I getting this money? And she said, well, do you know H.E. Childs? I said, yeah, I worked for him the last 2.5 years. She said, he wrote a check for you for $150,000. I said, $150,000? Back then, my tuition for a year was like $14,000. So you will get a check every month. Just come here every month and you go get a check. Of course, I sent that money home to my grandmother, and I got a new car my sophomore year, because you couldn't have one your freshman year. But again, it's those relationships. It's those relationships that you build. And so he was a mentor for me. He was white, but he was a mentor. He was one of the best mentors that I had, because he had children. He had a son and a daughter. They were quite older than I was, but he could have done, he didn't have to do that for me. He didn't have to do the money. He didn't have to do, the mentoring, the thing nothing. I was not his child. I was not his grandchild. He didn't have to do that. But baseball games, I went to every baseball game because he owned the team, and I didn't even like baseball. Still don't like baseball. But he made sure that I was at the baseball games. But again, it's the exposure to not only, the games and all that, but the people that you meet. And I have to be cautious and tell the guys at the gym and the guys that I mentor, be very careful about what you say and where you are, because you don't know who's sitting beside you in the sauna. You don't know who's on that equipment next to you at the gym. And that person next to you may be very well the person that you may need to reach out to. And then they remember what you said and how negative it was. And you ask them to do something for you. And they're like, oh, no, I remember what you said about this, that, and the other. So you have to be very careful until you're in that position where you can be like your president. You can say whatever you want. And it can't nobody. I can't say no one can do anything about it. Nobody will do anything about it because they can do a lot of stuff about it. They just don't want to. They choose to because they think he gonna give them some more money. So,
Oh man, you doing good, man. So let me ask you this, because you shared plenty of stories from your books. What do you hope the readers get from both of your books, man? Like what do you hope they accomplish through reading them?
I hope that they're very motivational, that they will read the stories and realize if this guy went through all of this and he still came out on top, he was still able to achieve, he's still alive, then I can do this too. I can do this too, because it talks about suicide in there. I mean, not that I've never had thoughts of suicide, but I know how society is now. So I talk about that, a lot of statistics in some of these stories about teenage suicide and failure, the graduation rates and things like that. So I want to motivate both of these books. I want to motivate people to reach their full potential. Reach your full potential. Nobody stops you from being successful but you. Find your niche. There's a niche out there for you. Find your niche and do what you need to do for you. Don't let husbands, don't let wives, because we get into this thing with, oh, well, maybe I'll just get married and he'll take care of me and he'll provide. No. I tell women all the time, do not depend on a man to do all that for you. First of all, you need to be looking for a man that you're equally yoked. You're equally yoked. So you don't have to depend on him doing it all for you. You choose to do for each other because you love each other. But be successful for yourself. Don't let him talk to you about, oh, well, you don't need to go to college, baby. I got you. For how long? Till the next one come along? No. Do you. So I'm hoping that the book will, people will read it. They will become motivated. They'll read the stories and they'll say, basically, I can do that too. I can do that. If he's gone through all this and can make it, then I can make it too. I don't have, and I even look at the things that I've gone through, but then I look at social media and I look at TV and I'm like, oh, wow. I don't have any reason to complain. And our parents used to teach us that, oh, my foot hurt. Well, what about those people that ain't got no feet? You got it good. At least you can feel your pain. They can't feel nothing. So stop complaining and do what you need to do, because you're going to regret it later on in life. A lot of these kids now, they think they're going to live forever anyway. But then later on in life, they start feeling like, oh, if I would have done this, oh, if I'd have listened, oh, if I'd have read a little bit more, it's too late. It's too late. Put yourself out there now to build your good life for later. People, oh, you retired. They retired 10 years. My whole goal was to retire. My whole goal was to retire before 50. And I did it 51. Ain't thought about it. I'm good. Got enough, like I say, I got enough built up for my grandchildren's college educations are paid for. Because that was one of my goals. So if I can do that, going through all the stuff that I've been through, you can do it. You can do it. You just have to set your mind to it.
For sure. And then just to even help the viewers and my readers, they always kind of ask something, but this is actually different because it's in your title, from challenges to triumphs. So I'm gonna ask a 2-part question, man, in terms of your challenges. Like, what was like the single biggest challenge you even faced in writing the book and having to overcome that? And then what was the most rewarding thing now that you've been able to put your books out, in the aftermath that you look back and reflect on it? What's been the most rewarding for you?
The biggest challenge with getting the book done, because the writing of the book was easy because they're all my stories. And I'm OCD anyway. And the publishers were kind of surprised because they offered a lot of help. They wanted the book to come out faster. They wanted, oh, we'll do that. Oh, you don't have to do this. So you don't have, no. I'm going to design the cover. I'm going to lay it out the way I want it. It's going to be numbered page by page. I'm going to do table of contents. The pictures will be in. When I give it to you, it's a final product. I think that's just the way that I am. So I had a lot of problems with my publisher in that sense. Matter of fact, that's the reason I got 2 different publishers, one for the first and one for the second, because we just did not agree on things like that. The biggest problem was probably, which I think every author goes through, especially with your first book, because you learn very quickly after that first one. The biggest problem I had was media, getting the book out there. Of course, your publisher is going to make sure it goes to Barnes and Nobles and Amazon, but Amazon wants almost half of what you're supposed to get. But you learn to negotiate. So that's one of the things I learned very early in my career. You learn to negotiate. There's always one right around the corner who want to make that other dime, So you learn to negotiate. But yeah, it was the media package, trying to get what they were going to be able to do to help you sell this book that they're going to make money off of. So that was the biggest thing. The reward that I have received for this it's not the money. Believe me, it's not the money. It is the reading, people who have read the book, and the comments, the positive comments that I get back, the laughter that I get back from the stories that are in both the cookbook and the stories that are in the triumphs of the story. And people just telling me, oh, you are so right about this. And I've tried this and you're right. And I've learned to be more assertive, in my career and taking part of those opportunities that have been presented to me. Because I've had a lot of people, especially in the business world, they'll write me back and say, I've been like administrative assistant for 12 years. And I never thought I could do anything else. But then after I read your book, I took that other class. And now I'm up for a promotion, or I'm going into a whole nother way of business, or I've opened up my own business. I read your book and now I'm stepping out on my own. I see my worth. So those are the most positive things that I have gotten out the book, because it's all about helping other people to reach their full potential. You always want everybody to reach their full potential.
For sure. And I agree with you 100%, man. I like hearing that, so I guess, man, the $1 million question is, man, what's next? Is there another book? cooking ventures? Like, what's next out there for you, man?
Well, I'm going to continue to cook. I don't do a lot of catering, especially here in Texas, because Texas people think everything is bought at the general dollar store. So I can't do it. Just can't do it. But I want to continue to socialize with people, inviting them to my home, cooking for them. I had 40 people here for Thanksgiving dinner. And teaching mostly guys how to cook, because I'm trying not only teaching them how to cook, but the reason that I'm teaching them how to cook is showing them how much money they can save by not going to, BJ's and Willie's and all of these restaurants 5 to 6 days a week, buying all this stuff. Cook. You got your leftovers. You can cook, like I did the other day. I cooked a pot of a chicken fettuccine. Okay, it's only me and my wife. I'm not gonna eat all of that. You cook it, you get you some freezer bags, you cook quart size, just enough for you and your wife, and you freeze it. So you don't have to eat it tomorrow, the day after, wait next month and say, oh, let me pull out one of those. But it saves you so much money. So much money. You cut your grocery bill in more than half. So I want to continue to do that. The next book that's coming out, and like I said, I think I'm trying to put it off to 2027, is a children's book. The way of the world is always get you a children's book in there. This is like singers; they got to do a Christmas album.
Yeah.
So I have to do a children's book. And I've already got the material basically written, because as each one of my grandchildren were born, I wrote them a letter of what my duties were to them and what I expected of them. And so I'm taking those letters, and each one of the letters was about 2 pages a piece, 2.5 pages. And taking those letters and putting them into, forming a book. The hardest part for this book is because I'm talking to children somewhere between 4 and I'll say 12. So I can't talk to them on a high school level. You have to convert all of this into some, for their age bracket. So I'm having to go back and question myself. Oh, no, that's too big a word. Oh, no, let me change this so they'll understand it, so they can relate to it. And then, of course, all the graphics that has to go with it. And just kind of, you have to bring it down, because where you're talking about, again, kids, their attention span is so short. You can't have a 20-page book. You've got to have maybe a 10, 15 at the most,
Absolutely.
And then you got to have the font that big, so they'll read it. So I'm going through all those things right now with that book. But like I said, I'm taking my time on it. I'm planning not to have it out until 2027. And then the 4th book is the second half of the cookbook. I've had so many people to contact me and say, "Hey, man, you got a recipe for this? And I'll usually go ahead and send them the recipe, but or I'll tell them, "Oh, it's coming out in the next book." Of course, they're impatient; they don't want to wait for it, so I'll go ahead and send it to them. But so yeah, the 4th book right now will be the second half of the cookbook, and I don't know what's coming after that.
Okay.
Who knows?
There's a lot, man. Anybody you want to give shout outs to, man? Any lasting words? And definitely, man, tell the viewers how to contact you, find you, how to support you for sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know my own email address for the book. But you can go on the website on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, and it has my email address. I'm on Facebook. You can just look up Thomas H. Carroll IV on Facebook, and it has a thing on there where you can write me. And I encourage you to do ask questions either about the cookbook or about the memoir. And I do have a lot of people who write me and ask me about both. I also I'm accepting invitations to book signings. I got some things lined up right now to do some lecturing. I've always done, lecturing to especially young people. So I am accepting those engagements right now through 2026. So I would love to do that. As far as what I would like to tell people to do, again, I just want to motivate them. I want them to get the best out of themselves, reach deep down and pull all of that out. Don't let things stop you. Don't let your past, don't let your parents' past, your grandparents' past, don't let anybody's past block your blessing to you. Get it out there. Chase your dream. Don't let anybody stop you from your dreams. Now, I don't care if you're a single mother with 6 children, you still have dreams. Get your dream in there, because the only way you can have your children successful with their dreams is that at some level you've had success with your dream. So don't be scared to ask for help. Never be scared to ask for it. There are so many programs out there to help people. And I know a lot of them are being cut off, but they're still out there. Your fraternities and your sororities, you got young kids that you're trying to mentor. That's the whole thing. And I tell my Panhellenic Council brothers and sisters, I tell them all the time, if you're not doing what your charter says you're doing, then you need to take those colors and hang them up on the wall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you took an oath and you made an oath just like anybody else. This is what you're going to do. And if you're not doing that, just leave it alone. So those programs are in place. Those fraternities and those sororities are there to help mentor young men and young women of all colors. I don't care. Like I said, I don't care if you're purple with polka dot, white polka dots. They're going to help you, because that's what we said we were going to do. Of course, you can probably tell somewhere back there, maybe not, wrong wall. I got an alpha wall over here. So I'm an Alpha Phi Alpha. And that's in the book too, the influence that they've had on my life.
That would have messed up the recording. Omega
yeah, see, that's me. That didn't put the camera on that wall. Yeah.
Oh,
but, that's their thing. They're supposed to do that. So reach out. There is a fraternity sorority. And that's just that group. There's nursing societies. There's anything that you want to be there. Everybody got a club. Everybody got, so reach out. And nowadays we have this thing in front of us that you can find anything. So if your child wants to be this, that, or the other profession, reach out to those companies, reach out to and find out, hey, is there anything? Reach out to your universities. In your area, find out what university has a summer program for your 9-year-old, for your 10-year-old. They don't have to be 18 and getting ready to go to college. They have all type of programs at universities starting, I think, with, like, they used to have it, I guess they still have it, Upward Bounds or something like that. And they start as early as like 10 years old. They come and get that university or college exposure and starts training their minds to, again, exposure to see what's all out there. So I encourage people to do that, because that's what society is supposed to do. That's what people are supposed to do for each other. So I encourage you to step out and do that. And if you have any questions about that, reach out to me on my Facebook page, Thomas H. Carroll IV, and let me know. Of course, I'm going to root for Prairie View. I know what programs they have. So, yeah.
All right. Well, Mr. Thomas, this is, let me give you your full name, Thomas H. Carroll IV. Hey, Man, let me give you flowers. I appreciate you coming on to the podcast. Man, this has been great. Definitely. I've been through a lot over these last few months just to kind of even get back going, man. So I really appreciate you kind of sticking with me, waiting for me to kind of get back well, to be able to get back to doing this. And man, and this ain't gonna be my last time talking to you, man. You full of stories, man. Any way that I can help you, on my podcast or anything else I do, I'm gonna definitely promote you. And even after this, I'll talk to you a little bit to kind of after we wrap up, man. But I really enjoyed this interview. I appreciate everything that you're gonna ultimately do for the channel. It's growing, and I can't wait to get the feedback because you definitely shared some great stories, man. You shared some great stories, and I really, really do appreciate it.
All right, and I appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast, man. This is really great. This is people don't realize how much these help, and they really are, because you get such a gamut of people out there watching it.
Absolutely. Well, that's it, man.
All right.